Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the country. Now you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of over there? Because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. They say this all the time, but I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly, truly special. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of The Herd talking about Dan Campbell. Is he receiving too much hate? I definitely gave him a bunch of hate yesterday, and thinking about it more, and I stand by everything I said, but there. And when I was queuing up this clip, I heard a little bit of it, because at first I was like, I don't know how much Colin Cowherd videos I'm going to make today, so I was just like, I'm just going to watch the show. And then I started listening to the first minute of this clip, and I was like, oh, you know what, actually I really want to talk about this. So I only watched the first minute before of this clip, when I was kind of just getting organized and stuff, and it made me think of a few things that I definitely want to share, and that I think that Colin brought up some really good points that I want to unpack a bit. So let's just get right into it.
I want to defend Dan Campbell. And during that loss to San Francisco, here's 3 things that need to be said, and loudly. He had his team prepared. As an underdog by a touchdown, they completely outplayed the Super Bowl-bound Niners and the great coaching staff there. He had his team prepared. He also, unlike what they did somewhere else, leaned in to his team's strength. He knows what his team is. Great O-line, run game, power. He leaned right into it. They dominated the Niners' time of possession first half. And also, and this is a cool thing if you're a parent, a coach, a teacher, he remained consistent to who he is. He remained consistent, authentic, real. He's aggressive, sometimes reckless. That never changed. Those are the best athletes and coaches. Flawed, we all are, but they remain consistent. So beat him up for his aggressiveness and beat him up for his play calling. But let's go back and look at those 3 things. Prepared, check. Leaned into his team's strength, check. And stayed true to who he is.
So the stay true to who he is actually probably something that I maybe disagree with more than anything. But I think the preparedness, I think that is a very, very valid point that I did not consider initially yesterday, is that he did have his team prepared, and they were absolutely outplaying the 49ers. No question about it. No question about it. And that's awesome. And that's really special. And that is a big part of coaching, is making sure your team is prepared, has a good game plan, and is ready for the moment. And he did get that team ready for the moment and prepared. Compare that to the Ravens. The Ravens were not prepared for that moment. They were all over the place. They melted down. Again, and I know a lot of Chiefs fans want to take all the responsibility for that game, but the Chiefs obviously played great, but a big part of that game was the Ravens failing themselves. They were not prepared. They never ran the ball. They ran the ball literally 6 times. They carried the ball 6 times, which is just absurd. I mean, it literally makes no sense, and there's a reason why that might have been the case that I don't know if I'm going to talk about it in this video later or next video. But regardless of that, they were clearly not prepared, melting down, Lamar melting down, Flowers melting down, all these dumb penalties and all this, and you did not see that with the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions were not favored to win, obviously. They were underdogs by over a touchdown. And the Ravens were favored to win that game and were unprepared. And honestly, I would say you could make the argument, okay, outside of a couple of these unfortunate events that went down, you could make the argument that the Lions played the best football of all 4 teams. Okay, I mean, you really can. The Chiefs played the most, what's the word? Like error-free football, right? The most mistake-free football, without a doubt. But who actually played the best, who had a higher ceiling, On the weekend over Sunday, I would say the Lions. I mean, the Lions really stepped up, and then obviously a couple miscues and a couple unfortunate events, as Ayuk even said. Ladybug landed on his shoe, and God was with him. God was with the 49ers that day. So even he admitted there was luck involved, right? Like, and if the own player can admit that there was luck involved, but the fans can't, I don't know what to say to you, right? Like, literally Ayuk is saying we were very lucky in that moment. So I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to argue with the actual football player on the field. But I would say that I think that's a great point. And again, he leaned in what they did well. Their OC, their offense did what they were supposed to do, and came up with the game plan. They didn't try to get, cute and fancy and all of that and try to trick everyone to be like, well, we're not going to use Gibbs now to run the ball. We're not going to do, this type of stuff. And that's what the Ravens did. That's what the Ravens ended up doing. But the third point, though, is he said, stay true to yourself. I would rather, or stay true to himself, in terms of Campbell and their identity, I guess. But that's the one that I take issue with, because there's a difference between being consistent and stubborn and being inflexible. And so you can be consistent in this regard and be aggressive and do those things, but at the same time, you still need to be smart. And you need to be able to know how to be flexible and what the moment calls for. And the moment in those games changed. They were no longer the underdogs in those moments. They were winning, and they were winning big. And so they needed to play like they were the winners, that they were no longer the underdogs. Ask yourself, if the 49ers are up by 14 at that point, are they going for it? Probably not. The Chiefs, Andy Reid, and you have Patrick Mahomes, the Patrick Mahomes, okay? And Travis Kelce and all these. In those moments, do you think Andy Reid's going for it on fourth down? No, he's not. And again, so why should you be any different in that regard? So this idea of staying true to yourself, I kind of take issue with. I would replace it with that he trusts his players, and because he even referenced, this is a great thing, as a parent to kids, and in a lot of ways, a coach is kind of, a daddy to the players, especially the younger players. And I don't even mean like emotionally, but it's anyone who's had coaches, especially for long periods of time, you develop a very deep relationship with them, even if you have a dad in a good family life, but they're your home away from home. But anyway, I think it's more so that he believes and trusted his players. That's the difference. I think maybe that should be the third key point more than anything, that if you want to prove to Dan, because he instilled in them confidence and trust in them. And even in the biggest moments is like, I believe, even if it doesn't work out, I still trust that you can do that. Compare that to, say, what happened with the Cowboys game, right? The Cowboys were not prepared at all for that game against the Packers. And there was no trust. And Dak and CeeDee Lamb started being like, what the heck is going on? And, McCarthy was calling a very weird game at that point. Same thing with Quinn. Like there wasn't the trust. The trust was lost. And the trust was definitely lost with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens and that coaching staff. Again, they run the ball throughout the whole season, but then they suddenly, in the time for the playoffs, when it's time when it matters most, they're like, nah, we're just not going to run the ball. And again, there's reason why that may be the case. And it has to do with their quarterback room and them wanting to prove that they can throw the ball. Because again, that whole game plan really just made zero sense, which, let's see if he talks about the Ravens now more.
Then there's Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for Baltimore.
Okay, yeah. Here.
The Ravens were the number one rush team in the league, and Kansas City was the weakest rush defense of the four teams remaining. I'm going to show you a piece of video of running back for the Ravens, Gus Edwards' first carry of the game. It was in the first quarter, and he gained 15 yards. He's really good. He didn't get another carry until the second half.
See, now that's insane. And again, Chiefs fans, I know you guys want to come and say, this is because the Chiefs defense. That has nothing to do with the Chiefs defense. Let me preface this. I am not a Chiefs hater. Okay? I love Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. I've loved Andy Reid since before you guys ever even had him as a coach, and you were probably making fun of him for losing NFC championship games and, 3 years in a row and finally getting there in the fourth to get to the Super Bowl, okay? I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. Only want good things to happen to those people, okay? That has nothing, that has all to do with the Baltimore Ravens and their offensive game plan. That was their game plan going into this game, because the first half is all scripted plays. These are all things that they know that they're going to do, and everything is run. They had this game plan, and originally someone was talking about this yesterday. Was it ego? And I was like, I don't understand how it could be ego. But then someone brought this up. I saw this on Twitter, actually, of all places, but it's with a very famous commentator. I don't know if I want to say his name, because I think the name of the person might, because he's gotten a little weird over the years, and more political, and he's just gotten a little goofy. But he used to be on Fox Sports, FS1, but he kind of brought up that he thinks that it was a race thing, that the Ravens have an all-black quarterback room. Now, to be very clear, I am not taking a position on this. I'm just relaying what I heard. But that it was an all-black quarterback room, and that they really wanted to prove that, that they don't need to just run, and that they really wanted to highlight that Lamar Jackson can throw, and they want to break the stereotype of black quarterbacks are more running quarterbacks than throwing quarterbacks. I think it's a thought-provoking point and question. I don't know how true it is. Obviously, I was not there. But everyone who's not a Chiefs fan, anyone who's just an unbiased fan, which I get why if you're a Chiefs fan, you're biased. So no hate thrown over there. But it was very clear. When you watch that game, you're just like, what the heck is going on with the Ravens? Again, they averaged 32 carries a game. And then in there, they literally only handed the ball off 6 times. And then the other 10 rushes were with Lamar, and half of his rushes weren't even like designed runs. They were just kind of scrambles that turned into runs. That is a disaster game plan. And again, that has nothing to do with just, the Chiefs defense was just suffocating them or made them not be able to do that. That's not what happened. The defense for the Chiefs definitely stepped up and made Lamar Jackson's job more difficult and made him uncomfortable, undeniably. But that's not why they just stopped handing the ball off. It's just not. That's not how football works. Okay, and even as we could look at the 49ers versus Detroit Lions game, the 49ers were down by 14 and they were still handing the ball off. And the defense was dominating, and the Detroit Lions defense was dominating at that point. They were shutting down the 49ers, and yet they were still handing the ball off to Christian McCaffrey. So, again, the Ravens, whatever they did, whatever the reasoning was, whether the coaches, the moment got to them, or whether it was because of this whole ego thing, or because of they did want to show the world, that we're not going to run, that we're going to throw, or they outcoached themselves and said, the Chiefs are expecting us to run the ball, and so we're going to pull, rip the rug from underneath them, and we're just going to throw the ball now, and they're watching tape of us running 32 times a game, and now, we're going to do the opposite, which could also be a possibility. Sometimes coaches get too smart for themselves, but it was bizarre. And when you're watching that game, again, if you're not a Chiefs fan, because you're watching that game if you're a Chiefs fan, that's right, look at us, our defense, we're shutting down the Ravens, they can't do nothing. That had some aspects of it, but the defense had nothing to do with why Lamar was launching the ball, 5 yards down the field in front of the receiver, or over the head, or in the ground, or starting to, get happy feet before anything was happening. So throwing into triple coverage, so that was just all bad offensive planning.
That is the strangest, aka worst game plan I've ever seen in a big game.
See? Exactly.
The Ravens are defined by their physicality, both sides. They are the number 1 rush team in the NFL all year long. They had 22 first and 10s, and they ran it on 5 of them.
That's insane.
Against, again, the worst rush defense statistically of the remaining 4 teams. The last time the Ravens on a first and 10 ran the ball, the very last time, was the first play of the second half. They never did it again. Inexcusable. Inexplicable. Insane. It makes no sense. The rest of the game, they wouldn't run the ball. They weren't down 17. They weren't down 24. The Niners were down 24-10 at home. They didn't stop running the ball. They never panicked. It'd be one thing, too, if Baltimore ran it a lot in the first half and then panicked. That's not good coaching either. But they literally prepared all week to not run the ball. The criticism for Dan Campbell, it seems to me, is too harshly based just on the results. If Josh Reynolds on a 4th down catches this ball, it's not even a topic of going for it. We defend Dan Campbell. We say, well, I mean, it's who he is. But if Baltimore even had come back to win this game, my takeaway and your takeaway would have been, what the hell are they doing? And run the...
Exactly. And I think that's such a great point because, again, Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions came to play. And now they'll get criticized for going for it and those types of decisions. And the Ravens, I don't know if they're necessarily getting that heat as much. I think there's some of the heat that Lamar Jackson choked or whatever. But that offensive game plan, the coaching, I mean, as Colin highlighted multiple times now, was just awful and insane and just doesn't make any sense. And I think his point about if the Ravens even came back to win the game. So anyone who's been watching my channel now knows that I make a lot of comments where I say, this game was more about the Chiefs winning the game than the other team losing the game. Or this was more about, you know, the so-and-so losing the game than the other team winning the game. That really this was their game to win and they lost it, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of people get mad when I make those statements, right? If I say, you know, especially if I talk about the Chiefs or the 49ers, people are always like, that's BS, that's nonsense, yada, yada, yada. Which, okay, fine, whatever. But if the Ravens ended up winning that game, I would not have been able to come here on Monday and said the Ravens were just a better team and they came out and won that game, yada, yada, yada. I would have just said, I don't know what I was watching and I don't know how they were able to win that game. And that's the thing, they almost did win that game. You know, there was a chance for them to win that game is what I should say. It was within the realm of possibility. Even if they didn't have those bonehead mistakes of the fumble reaching out and the taunting and stuff like that, throwing into triple coverage. And even if those things didn't go down that way, you would still just be like, I don't know what that game plan was because the game plan didn't win or it didn't work. Even if you win, doesn't mean that the game plan was correct, right? If the Chiefs ended up losing that game, that doesn't mean that Andy Reid's game plan and Spag's game plan for defense was wrong. Right, you can have the correct game plan and still lose. Kind of like what happened with the Lions, right? Their game plan was right. A couple things just didn't go their way, and the rest is history. But if the Ravens ended up winning that game, in no way would you say Lamar Jackson was just resilient and stood up and did what needed to do what was done, and yada yada yada. And the defense, I mean, I guess you could make the argument for the Ravens where the defense did great, right? If the Ravens ended up winning, you could say, the Ravens held Patrick Mahomes, yada yada yada. You could make that argument. But from the offensive perspective, you would be like, I don't know what that was. You completely abandoned your identity. I don't, you know, like what were you trying to do? What was the mentality? What was the objective? What was the actual game plan? Like it does. And again, we know that the first half, these are all scripted plays. These are things that they're practicing again and again and again, and that they know. So we know for a fact that that was their game plan. That was their game plan, to just not run the ball. And it was stupid. It was stupid and doesn't make any sense. And the coaches really deserve to be ridiculed way more than I think that they are, because it seems, and again, I'm sure maybe in the local media, and any of you Baltimore Ravens fans who have you know, who are more deeply connected to the fan base and have access to the local, you know, Ravens radio and TV and stuff like that, I would love to hear what you guys are all saying about this. Like, are you blaming the coach's game plan? Are you blaming Lamar? Is Harbaugh getting anything? The OC for the Ravens? Like, I would love to hear that. So please let me know in the comments below, because I honestly genuinely don't know. So I would really love to hear your thoughts on this one. And also same thing with the Detroit Lions fans. I'm curious to hear. I know a lot of fans are mad at Dan Campbell, but I'm just curious what the general feeling tone around Dan Campbell and the Lions, and how you guys kind of feel how that all went down. And if maybe now that a couple of days have passed, have things settled a little bit, and are you a little bit more just like, you know what, it was a great season. just as the way it goes. But let me know your thoughts. Would love to hear them. Please let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and I would love to see you part of it. And please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps with the visibility and the algorithm. It's free. It doesn't do anything for you. All you do is have to just click the button, and it really, really helps for me and the visibility. And I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.